Your Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Check me out on X at Jack Bushman2, but make sure to follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey to get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. A quick thank you is in order as well to everyone who helped me reach 2,000 followers over the weekend on the Locked On Blackhawks X account. Thank you all very much. And I also got to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Go and download the FanDuel app now or check out FanDuel.com to get $300 worth of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, Blackhawks fans, happy Monday. Opening things up here on the show. First, do want to apologize for not having an episode come out Friday following the Blackhawks' frustrating overtime loss to the Boston Bruins, as well as not having a show come out yet after a home opening loss, another frustrating one to the hands of the Montreal Canadiens on Saturday night. I'm going to get into that here today, but before I do, just wanted to provide you all with a little bit of reasoning in terms of why I haven't had a show drop in the last 3 days. I always pride myself on being open and honest with all of you out there. I think that helps build the relationship between us as much as we can, over the internet and through a podcast app or whatever it may be. But it's been a tough last couple of days for yours truly, as at the time of this recording, it is about 8:45 a.m. Central Time. Me and my family are sadly expecting my grandfather to probably pass away here in these next couple of hours. And this is something that we've seen coming over these last couple of weeks, and definitely, wanted to spend as much time as possible as I could with him before the time unfortunately comes. And so that was my priority here over the weekend. So I do apologize for not having an episode come out. And I appreciate you all, hanging with me, still helping me reach 2,000 followers on X over the weekend. But yeah, it hasn't been an easy last couple of days. Really tough, honestly. And here this morning, getting the news that it's probably going to be today was really tough as well. So yeah, just wanted to open up with that. I appreciate everyone's patience during this time. And I also wanted to share a story about how pivotal a role my grandpa played in me being here right now as the host of Locked On Blackhawks and having an opportunity to cover the Blackhawks and, following my passion. I really don't think it would have been possible without him. And this is a story I've told a couple of times throughout the years, but definitely wanted to share it again here today. It's my first Blackhawks game that I ever remember attending. I know I was, at a couple when I was like 3 or 4 years old, but don't have any memories or anything of those games. But the first one I truly remember came in the 2007-2008 season for the Blackhawks, where kind of in a similar fashion to what's transpiring this season, there was, influx of young talent that the Blackhawks had on their NHL roster, led by Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. And it was, after some dark years for the Blackhawks in the early to mid 2000s, it really was the first team that provided a spark for the organization once again. And they were making a late season push for the playoffs, wound up falling short. But I do really believe those, meaningful games down the stretch in 07-08 helped this young group, go on to make the Western Conference Final in 2008-2009, to lose to the Red Wings, and then go on to win their first of 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years in 2009-2010. But it was a meaningful game late in the season as the Hawks were chasing a wild card spot against the division rival St. Louis Blues. And St. Louis, almost in like a similar fashion to what happened on Saturday in the home opener, but with a little bit over a minute to go in regulation. I remember the Blues scoring a goal to jump ahead by 1. It might have honestly even been 3-2, which would be so fitting considering what's happened in the Blackhawks' first 3 games. But I remember the Blues jumping ahead 3-2 and seeing people. I was sitting down in the hundreds because my grandpa always loved to spoil me. And I remember seeing the people, getting up from their seats, heading for the exits, only for James Wisniewski like 25 or 30 seconds later. You all remember James Wisniewski, right? Only for Wisniewski to go on and pot the game-tying goal to even up the score. Like, as I said, 25, 30 seconds later, the fans come rushing on back down to their seats to get ready for overtime. And then the man who would go on to win the Calder Trophy, Patrick Kane, ended up scoring the overtime winner. I still remember him going and celebrating against the far side glass from where I was sitting in. Just like that, I was hooked. I was in love with the game of hockey. Patrick Kane had become my favorite player. Incredible to see what he would go on to do the rest of his still ongoing career. Still my favorite player of all time to this day, but it was because of that moment that I fell in love with Patrick Kane, fell in love with the Blackhawks, fell in love with the game of hockey overall. And without being in attendance for that game, I truly don't know if I would be here doing what I love right here, right now. So that was definitely a story I wanted to share here today about how much my grandpa means to me. So appreciate you all again for hanging with me these last couple of days. I appreciate in advance for, I'm sure, the kind words I'm going to receive down below in the comment section. But with that being said, as uneasy as it may be, do still have a job to do, and we got some Blackhawks hockey to break down from over the weekend. As I mentioned off the jump, frustrating loss for the Blackhawks in their home opener on Saturday night to the Montreal Canadiens, 2-2 going into the third period for the third consecutive game, only to lose by a goal for the third consecutive game as well. You know, the Blackhawks, this young group is showing a lot of fight. They're showing that they're definitely capable of being a lot more competitive than they've been these last couple of seasons, but haven't been able to close out these games properly. And as I talked about in my post game for Chicago Hockey Now following Saturday, just haven't been able to show that killer instinct needed to go and grab a victory when the game is hanging in the balance. Caden Gooley rips the souls out of the fans in attendance at the United Center with the game-winning goal with only 15 seconds left in the third period to put the Canadiens ahead 3-2. And it was a very exciting game. You know, up until that point, the fans had plenty to be on their feet for in the opening 59 minutes and 45 seconds. It was a back and forth contest with the teams trading goals. There were, countless post-whistle skirmishes. And the second period in particular, seriously, one of the craziest frames that I can recall in recent memory. And I thought, at even strength, it was a really solid performance from the Blackhawks. But what plagued them is they weren't at even strength a whole lot, because they took 10, well, they actually technically took 14 penalties in this game, but 10 of them led to power play opportunities for the Montreal Canadiens. And you just cannot do that in this league and expect good things to happen to you. And honestly, the Blackhawks PK deserves some credit, considering they killed off 8 of the 10 power play opportunities that the Canadiens had in this game. And on most of the 8 that they killed, did a really strong job of limiting the amount of chances or even shots on goal that the Canadiens generated. Most of those were not very dangerous man advantages for the Habs. But when when you give your opponents 10 power play opportunities, bad things are going to happen. And 2 of the Canadiens' 3 goals in this game, their opening 2 goals, were both scored on the man advantage. And the Blackhawks just cannot back themselves in a corner like that consistently moving forward. And listen, if this was just kind of a 10 penalties, hopefully that's just going to be a one-time thing. But staying out of the sin bin has now cost the Blackhawks in their last 2 contests. They took 5 penalties on Thursday night against the Boston Bruins. So clearly the lack of discipline is something they need to, focus on a little bit more in these next coming games. Cannot be taking as many penalties as they have. Like I said, bad things are going to happen. And it wasn't like it was just the youngsters who don't have a lot of NHL experience who are at the forefront of all the penalties the team took on Saturday night. No, it was the veterans who are mostly in the sin bin. Connor Murphy and Sam Lafferty both committed 2 penalties. Both of them for Lafferty were tripping minors. Ryan Donato also was in the sin bin on Saturday, as well as Matt Grzelcyk. So, these are things we cannot afford to let happen from our veterans. They just simply got to be better. They got to be more disciplined out there on the ice. And I know a couple of those calls that went against the Blackhawks were a little bit ticky-tacky, but regardless, they were still making poor decisions out there, putting their sticks in bad spots, and just, again, that lack of discipline, that's something that they got to tighten up on, because with how young this team is, how inexperienced they are, you can't be allowing your opponent to have a handful of more power play opportunities than you get on a nightly basis. So it was a good effort from the Blackhawks at even strength. The third period was the period that had the most 5-on-5 time in it, and the Blackhawks did pretty darn well up until Caden Gooley's late tally. But yeah, just something they absolutely have to do a better job of in these next couple of games. And not surprising that they've taken 15 penalties in their last two contests, and they've come away with 2 losses. At the same point in time, despite how much they've been in the sin bin, the Blackhawks are still finding a way to be right in the thick of things. And there were still some promising takeaways from the game on Saturday that I wanted to touch on here as well, starting with Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar continuing to produce, continuing to show strides being made in each of their games. Nazar with another 2-point performance on Saturday. That gives him a team-leading 5 points through the Blackhawks' opening 3 games. Tallied a secondary assist on Sam Rinzel. It was a secondary assist on Sam Rinzel's opening goal of the game, and then wound up getting a power play primary assist with a shot from the slot that deflected off of Connor Bedard's sleeve and past Montreal Canadiens goaltender Sam Montembeault. For Bedard, it's his second goal in as many games now. This one obviously coming off of a little bit of a fortunate break, but do want to, give him credit for going to the dirty areas and getting rewarded for it as an undersized player. And speaking of going to the dirty areas as an undersized player, both Bedard and Nazar were involved in a handful of the skirmishes that went down on Saturday night. We heard Connor Bedard say following the game against the Bruins, we're not going to take any shit. Even if we are, smaller than some of the guys out there, we're not just going to let them go and bully us around. And I think for 2, key offensive pieces of the Blackhawks moving forward, obviously Nazar presents a great two-way game, but being the undersized players that they are that are going to be the leading forces of the Blackhawks offensively, I love how they're, stepping up for each other in these types of situations, not taking any crap from the opponents and not backing down from anyone. I really do believe that's going to help instill the culture that the Blackhawks want to create here going forward. Because when you have 2 guys like Bedard and Nazar not backing down and mixing it up out there, that's going to make the rest of the roster, have that same mentality, not being afraid of anyone, standing up for your teammates. So I love to see that both Bedard and Nazar once again showed their feistiness on Saturday night, in addition to their offensive contributions. Like I said, second 2-point game for Frank Nazar in the opening 3 contests of the new season. Connor Bedard now has 2 goals in his last 2 games. Love to see them continuing to produce on the offensive side of things. And then how about Sam Rinzel finally cashing in on his first NHL goal? Had so many primetime opportunities in his first 11 NHL games to get that first tally, but finally found the back of the net against the Canadiens to kick off the scoring for the Blackhawks. And I do believe altogether as well, Rinzel has just looked a lot more comfortable in a top pairing role than he did on opening night against the Florida Panthers, which also came without Alex Vlasic, of course, his defensive partner. So he's been a lot sturdier in that top pairing role. Didn't commit a giveaway in his over 25 minutes of ice time, which led the Blackhawks on Saturday night. Also tallied 3 block shots as well. And just altogether looks a lot more confident and comfortable with the puck on his stick than he did on opening night. So great things from Sam Rinzel, Connor Bedard, and Frank Nazar. And I also got to give a lot of credit to Spencer Knight. I thought he was tremendous once again in his second start of the season. Picked up where he left off from his first outing against the Panthers. Didn't have to make as many saves as he did in that season opener, but altogether stopped 25 of the 28 shots that he faced on the night, and has been a huge reason why the Blackhawks, he was a huge reason why the Hawks were still in this game, despite allowing the Canadiens to have 10 power play opportunities. A lot of real good saves made by Spencer Knight, and just the composure that he's shown when the opposition has the momentum, when the opposition is generating the lion's share of the opportunities, because the Blackhawks gave him 10 power plays. He's been really sound, and I've been really impressed with him in his first 2 starts as now the true number 1 goaltender here this season for the Chicago Blackhawks. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get enough offensive run support to go and pick up his first win of the season. The Blackhawks dropped to 0-2-1 through their opening 3 games, 3 1-goal losses. This young team, they've got a lot of heart, they've got a lot of grit, and they got a lot of fight in them, but they got to figure out how to finish games. And quite honestly, it's not, too surprising that they haven't established, like I said, that killer instinct as of yet. And it was a huge reason why I talked heading into the start of the season about how I expected the Blackhawks to get off to a little bit of a slow start, considering, it was just such an inexperienced group that they had, considering that a new head coach in Jeff Blashill was coming in and implementing some new systems, a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces. Guys are still trying to establish chemistry with one another, right? But I really do believe these types of losses, as frustrating and painful as they are, that's going to help the Blackhawks later on down the year figure out what they need to do better in these types of situations and in these moments to come away with 2 points. They've been right there. They've been a lot more competitive, and they've definitely been a lot more fun than they've been these last couple of seasons as well, even though it has been 3 consecutive losses to open up the year. They just need to do a better job in, the closing moments, the third period, and in overtime against the Boston Bruins. They've had a chance to win each of these games, right? I think the one against Florida, the Panthers really dominated that third period, but the final frame against Boston, it was pretty tight-knit, and then the Blackhawks definitely had the better chances in the 3-on-3 period to go and get that victory. I thought they were the better team at even strength last night in the third period, but unfortunately just haven't been able to get that crucial goal in those dwindling moments to come away with the win. We'll see if that happens as they're back in action at the United Center again tonight against the Utah Mammoth, which I will be previewing in just a minute here during segment 3. But first, do want to touch on Artyom Levshunov being a healthy scratch for the Blackhawks in their home opener coming up in just a moment here in segment 2. But first, I do got to talk to you all about one of today's sponsors, which is FanDuel. The NFL season is now in full swing, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. And right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. And what I personally love about FanDuel is that it's super quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. With player props, same-game parlays, and now more ways than ever to get in on the action, are you ready to play? All you got to do is download the FanDuel app now or go and visit FanDuel.com in order to get started. Again, that's the FanDuel app, or go and check out FanDuel.com today to place your first $5 bet and get $300 worth of bonus bets when it wins. All right, quick reminder first to please go and smash that like button and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. Thank you all very much. Segment 2 on today's show, though, not in the lineup for the Blackhawks during their home opener on Saturday was defenseman Artyom Levshunov. For the first time this season, he was the extra defenseman out of the lineup, healthy scratched by Jeff Blashill. And I thought it was kind of interesting timing for the Blackhawks to go and make this decision, considering it was against the Montreal Canadiens, who, of course, wound up selecting Ivan Demidov in the 2024 NHL draft. The Blackhawks elected to not draft him with the second overall pick and go with Artyom Levshunov. And with the Habs being the most insufferable fan base in the entire league, not that that should weigh into Jeff Blashill's decision whatsoever, but it definitely wasn't like an ideal first healthy scratching in terms of timing for Artyom Levshunov here this season. And I also thought it was really curious to see that he wasn't part of the Blackhawks red carpet event where, he actually wound up being the only healthy scratch in this game because Jason Dickinson is out due to an injury. Landon Slager is on IR right now as well. Ethan Del Mastro got sent back down to the Rockford Ice Hogs on Friday. So Levshunov was the only healthy scratch in this game. Slager, Dickinson, they weren't part of the red carpet events as well, but they were a little bit banged up. Artyom Levshunov is healthy, but didn't wind up in the lineup, but still wasn't announced in the red carpet event, which I thought, as one of the top prospects in the organization, was probably something the Blackhawks should have done, right? Now maybe it was like Levshunov's choice not to do so, as I've seen some people suggest on social media, but knowing Artie, I don't think he'd be the type of guy to be like, no, I don't want to go out there. I feel like this was a Blackhawks kind of thing, and not like he absolutely has to be out there for the red carpet and it's like super meaningful or anything, but considering he's a 19-year-old that is going to be a priority for the franchise moving forward, as, like I just said, one of the top prospects, I thought, as also a name that has a lot of recognition already by Blackhawks fans, despite him only have played in 20 NHL games at this point in time, I was just a little bit surprised that Artyom Levshunov wasn't part of the group that got rolled out there for the red carpet event. The Blackhawks did announce him during their player introductions on the ice. He was obviously not on the ice. He was up in the press box along with Slaggert and Dickinson. Didn't get to see Laurent Brossoit, by the way. He still just remains MIA. Who even knows if he actually truly signed a contract with the Chicago Blackhawks, right? But yeah, no Artyom Levshunov on Saturday night against the Canadiens. And you got to think, in addition to the up and down start it's been dating back to the beginning of training camp and the preseason for Levshunov, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride for him, as I've discussed here on the show, leading to me saying I don't really know if he's ready to thrive up in the NHL right here, right now. And the thrive, not survive mentality is what Kyle Davidson and Blashill as well have kind of preached in determining where they want their prospects to begin the season, right? These last couple of years. That's why we saw Frank Nazar last year kick things off in the AHL, even though probably could have been an NHLer. That's why we saw Oliver Moore start the season with the Rockford Ice Hogs this year as well. But you got to think, in addition to the roller coaster ride it's been for Levshunov, the breakdown that he had late in the third period against the Boston Bruins probably led to him being a healthy scratching in this one. I actually didn't see it happen live, but I know Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times posted about it, and Ben's one of the best, if not the best, on the Blackhawks beat. If you're not following him and tuning into this podcast, I don't know what you're doing. But Ben Pope said that after Artyom Levshunov took a high sticking penalty late in that third period, while the Boston Bruins still had possession with the extra attacker out, Levshunov kind of stopped playing to go and say something quickly to the official, and also went up and apparently looked at the Jumbotron to see if he was going to be able to get a quick replay of that to maybe, help his case of why it shouldn't have been a penalty. But regardless, I mean, with the game coming down to the wire, right, in a moment like that, that is absolutely unacceptable for a young defenseman to do. And like I said, there's going to be learning moments. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be bumps in the road for a young defenseman. But that, in addition to the bumpy ride it's already been for Levshunov, definitely didn't help his case, and I think probably led to him being a healthy scratching in this one. Jeff Blashill, after the game, when talking about his reasoning and why Levshunov sat out, kind of downplayed the significance about it, saying, there's going to be games throughout the course of the season where Levshunov just isn't going to be in the lineup. He's not going to play in all 82, and that's not the end of the world. And I do understand that. I feel that I feel the same way about the matter, right? Like there's going to be games where Levshunov can learn still from the press box. He doesn't have to be on the ice on a nightly basis in order to continue that development path. And Jeff Blashill kind of said the same thing. But I did think it was an interesting timing for it to occur, not only against the Montreal Canadiens, but just also in the home opener, getting an opportunity to skate on the ice and, hear the fans give you a round of applause because they know your name. They know you're going to be a key piece of what we're building here in Chicago. And to kind of take that away from Artyom Levshunov, while maybe he didn't, I don't know. I still think it's a little too harsh of a punishment for the situation or to think he didn't deserve it because of the hiccup he had. I don't know. Regardless, I just thought it was a very weird development for Levshunov. And speaking of weird, he also was skating on the second pairing with Wyatt Kaiser during the morning skate, only to be held on the ice for a little bit longer than everyone else, which typically indicates a healthy scratch. He was asked by Mark Lazarus in the locker room if he's going to play tonight, and he said probably not. So Louis Crevier ended up drawing into the lineup, and I actually thought, even though he only played like 8 minutes, I thought Louis Crevier actually had a pretty solid game. Was on the ice for one of the Blackhawks goals, I believe, and also dropped the mitts with Caden Gooley after he laid a big hit on Frank Nazar in the neutral zone. Wasted no time in dropping those gloves and standing up for his teammate. It was a clean hit from Gooley, in my opinion, but when you hit a player of Frank Nazar's caliber and the significance that he has to this Blackhawks team, I love that Louis Crevier let Caden Gooley and everyone else know you're going to have to answer for that. And again, it's another example of the Blackhawks sticking up for one another, not backing down. Obviously, it's easy for Louis Crevier to do as a 6'8" defenseman. I'm sure Caden Gooley was kind of crapping down his leg when he looked up and saw who he was about to have to drop the gloves with. But I've been pretty impressed with Louis Crevier through his first 2 NHL games, and I do wonder if he's going to get another opportunity here tonight on the back end for the Blackhawks. But Artyom Levshunov, healthy scratch against the Montreal Canadiens. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I'll talk about whether we could see him draw back into the lineup for the second home game of the season at the United Center against the Utah Mammoth. Real quick, just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter the most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. And you can easily find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3 here today, the Blackhawks have an opportunity on home ice to go and get their first win of the 25-26 campaign as they'll be taking on the Utah Mammoth with the puck dropping at 7:30 p.m. Central Time here later this evening. And I'm really curious to see, I'm obviously recording this prior to the morning skate, so some guesswork is still going on in determining what the Blackhawks lineup is going to be. But for the forward side of things, it's pretty clear considering that Landon Slaggert, as of right now, still remains on injured reserve. Jason Dickinson, by the way, we got an update from Jeff Blashill on his status. He had to exit Thursday's game against the Boston Bruins early and did not return. Dickinson is expected to miss right around a week. He's listed day-to-day with a lower body injury. Very promising news considering there were some worries potentially that it could be a lot longer. A week seems like pretty good news for Dickinson. However, it definitely puts the Blackhawks backs against the wall at the faceoff dot even more. And they struggled in that category once again against the Montreal Canadiens without Dickinson. And as a whole, through the opening 3 games, even with Dickinson in the first 2, the Blackhawks have really struggled at the dot. And that's because they have Connor Bedard as their top line center, Frankie Nazar as their second line center. Now, Ryan Green's been bumped up to the 3C role and making his season debut on Saturday, and I expect him to be in the same spot again here tonight against the Canadiens unless Landon Slaggert is able to miraculously return. Lukas Reichel centered the Blackhawks' fourth line, even though I always have thought he'd fare better on the wing. A little surprised that they didn't go with Nick Foligno at the center ice position there. However, Foligno did take a lot of those draws, and they probably just like Reichel's speed down the middle as a whole. But those were the Blackhawks' 4 center icemen on Saturday against the Montreal Canadiens. So maybe not all that surprising that they've continued to struggle at the faceoff dot. Credit to Connor Bedard. He only took 4 draws in this game, but he at least won 2 of them. Frank Nazar, though, didn't have the best night at the faceoff dot. Ryan Green, I think he's set up to be the best of the 3 in that department, but hasn't really translated to a ton of success at this point in time. It's probably not going to be easy again here tonight for the Blackhawks as they're going to be without Jason Dickinson, but expecting the forward group to continue to be Colton Dach up on the top line. I just think, well, he hasn't really played like a instrumental role and Connor Bedard getting on the stat sheet in these last couple of games. I thought Andre Burakovsky looked pretty good against the Habs on Saturday as well. Bedard found him with a beautiful feed on a 2-on-2 rush, but sadly Burakovsky's shot rang off the crossbar. I don't think Colton Dach's been like a huge factor in that top line getting on the board, but he does provide some great size and physicality for that trio as a power forward guy who can go to the net front and cause some havoc while Bedard and Burakovsky can play pitch and catch on the outside. So fully expect that to be the top line here again tonight. Teuvo Teravainen, along with Frank Nazar and Tyler Bertuzzi, that's going to be the second line. Teuvo, by the way, didn't mention in segment 1 when quickly diving through the recap against the Canadiens. He also tallied 2 points in that one for his second multi-point effort already here of the season. Now has 4 points through the opening 3 games. Hopefully that second line can continue to keep up their hot start. Ryan Donato, expect him to be on the third line left wing, along with Ryan Green, who, like I mentioned, has been bumped up from the 4C spot to the 3C spot without Jason Dickinson in the lineup. And then Ilya Mikheyev on the right wing spot. Didn't mention this in segment 1 either, but Mikheyev, I thought, was excellent on the penalty kill for the Blackhawks. Recently had his 31st birthday over the weekend as well, so happy belated birthday to Ilya Mikheyev, who I've really enjoyed since the Blackhawks acquired him from the Vancouver Canucks. The pace that he plays with, the two-way play, helped out on the top line last year when there was just a revolving door of wingers skating along with Connor Bedard. While he offensively doesn't have the makeup to be like a true top liner, he at least gave Bedard a pacier winger that he could play alongside. And Mikheyev ended up scoring 20 goals for the Blackhawks last year for the second time in his career. So I've been really happy with Ilya Mikheyev during his Blackhawks tenure. And I thought he was really strong on the penalty kill for the Blackhawks on Saturday night. Made some excellent plays, both with his skates and with his active stick. He'll be on the third line along with Green and Donato here again tonight. Then expecting the fourth line to be rounded out with Nick Foligno, Lucas Reichel, and Sam Lafferty. Sam definitely needs to clean up his play. Cannot be a veteran who's, committing 2 penalties in a single game when that's an issue for the Blackhawks on that same night. And then defensively, this is where it's going to be really curious. I'm expecting Vlasic and Rinzel obviously to be as the top pairing. Louis Crevier has been really strong in his first 2 games, obviously scored in his season debut on Thursday against the Boston Bruins, and he's playing his role well. He knows what he does. He knows what he can't do. Even though he's getting limited ice time, I feel like he's really making the most of it. So I feel like Louis Crevier deserves to be in the lineup here again tonight, but I do feel like Artyom Levshunov should be back in there as well. But we know Wyatt Kaiser's not coming out. We know that Connor Murphy, as a veteran, even though he took 2 penalties along with Lafferty on Saturday, he's not coming out of the lineup. Maybe the Blackhawks consider going 11 forwards, 7 defensemen for the second time in 3 games. That's what they kind of surprisingly rolled out on Thursday against the Boston Bruins. I personally never liked the 11 forward defensive 7 defenseman route. I feel like it never goes well for the Blackhawks, whether it was under Jeremy Colleton, Luke Richardson, or now with Jeff Blashill. I just feel like it never really works, but it also gives Connor Bedard the opportunity to go and double shift. And along with Foligno and Ryan Green, when he was skating on the fourth line on Thursday, they had some really good shifts combined with one another. So maybe the Blackhawks do go with 7 defensemen again here tonight to get both Crevier and Levshunov back in the lineup. I expect Matt Grzelcyk to probably be in there. I don't think they want to put either Levshunov or Crevier on their offside. However, Connor Murphy, it's been years now, but Connor Murphy has played the left side as a righty in the past. And I'm just not a Matt Grzelcyk guy, man. I just don't think he fits well with this team. I haven't really seen anything noticeable from him, not only in these 3 regular season games, but all throughout the preseason and training camp. It should just be Nolan Allen, okay? And I'm not actually getting that worked up about it. I've seen people in the comment section say if you're actually getting mad about Matt Grzelcyk, I'm not actually mad about it, but it is one move that I genuinely disagree with. Disagree with Kyle Davidson on, I should say. Excuse me. Sorry for the word salad there. And not that I always agree with what GM KD does, but at least most of the time I understand his perspective and reasoning. I get why he wanted to bring another veteran in there. I still just don't understand why it was Matt Grzelcyk. He's not the answer. We didn't need a puck-moving, offensive-minded defenseman. We need a bigger-bodied, defensive-minded guy. And if you didn't want that to be Nolan Allen because of his youth, there were other options out there on the market, I'm sure, that they could have gone and brought in to be as a 7th defenseman for this team. Matt Grzelcyk just isn't doing it for me. And it's just not a good fit for what the Blackhawks kind of need on that third defensive pairing. So I don't know. I'm expecting Matt Grzelcyk to be in there tonight. I'd personally be a little happy if he wasn't, just because I do think you want to play both Crevier and Levshunov. And like I said, they can still do that while putting 7 defensemen out there tonight. I just haven't been really thrilled with Matt Grzelcyk through the start of his Blackhawks tenure, but it is what it is. It is not a super impactful thing for the Blackhawks on their blue line right now. Like I said, I get why Kyle Davidson wants another veteran back there. I just think they'd be better suited playing Nolan Allen, who looked like he could handle NHL action right here, right now. We'll see what winds up going down for the Blackhawks on their blue line here this evening. I'm going to guess, though, that they're going to go with 11 forward, 7 defensemen. Actually, now kind of thinking about it and talking over live, if that is the case, I'd probably guess Lucas Reichel winds up being healthy scratched. I'll post about it on X whenever the Blackhawks get on the ice for their morning skate here in just about an hour. That's the way I'm projecting things right now. Again, just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the patience and for the understanding and for probably getting as well why this was a little bit of a scrambly episode for yours truly. There's been a lot on my mind here as of late, but like I said, got a job to do. Didn't want to leave you all hanging on the Blackhawks news. So I appreciate all of you for all of your support and everything else along the way. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes. I'm Jack Bushman. You can follow me on X at Jack Bushman2. Make sure to check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, go Hawks. Hopefully we get that first win of the season here tonight against Utah. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.